Joe Biden promised Ukraine $1 billion if they fired the prosecutor investigating his son's company.
If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a bitch. Got fired.
But when President Trump asks Ukraine to investigate corruption, the Democrats want to impeach him, and their media lapdogs fall in line. They lost the election. Now they want to steal this one. Don't let them.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the Exile podcast within the Cuban American Voice. The purpose of my columns or podcast called Exile is to try to help all Americans to avoid becoming exiles due to the rise in socialism that is spreading around our country. I had to be an exile from Cuba, and therefore I would like to alert as much as possible everyone who will be able to view this podcast. My name is Frank Rodriguez, and today's podcast is called The Biden and Biden and Biden and Biden and Company. Joe Biden, the candidate from the Democratic Party, the former vice president, had two sons. One surviving son, Hunter Biden, has gone around Kazakhstan, Ukraine, China, on and on, in the same airplane as his father, coming home from the trip with contracts. He went to China on Air Force Two with his father and came home with $1.8 billion investment in a new investment fund or hedge fund that he had started without any previous experience. He got a $3.5 million check from the wife or former wife of the mayor of Moscow. He has not denied receiving it and has not explained what that was for. And he went to Ukraine. You have to remember that his father is in charge of Ukraine and China. He was the point man for President Obama in charge of these two very important diplomatic missions. I call it Biden, Biden, and Biden, and Biden because Joe has two brothers, James and Frank. Frank went to Iraq, another country to add to the list. Iraq was recovering from the war, and Joe Biden obtained for his brother Frank a lucrative contract to build housing for the people of Iraq. Frank had never built housing, and this was millions and millions of dollars taxpayer money for Frank. And in Jamaica and Costa Rica, the second brother, James, also obtained lucrative contracts. These people had never had these contracts before Biden became vice president. Mr. Biden has 4 homes. He has his only job has been to be in the Senate and earns $175,000 a year, and it's hardly a salary commensurate with being a wealthy person. Yes, yet he is, just like Bernie Sanders, who has 3 homes. This is the typical type of corruption that we have been accustomed to hearing about. And then last week, we actually get a laptop that had been dropped off in Delaware, the home state of the Bidens, by Biden's son. And this laptop was never returned to Hunter, the reason being that he never went back to get it. And per the contract, when you leave a shop like this, if after 90 days or whatever you don't come to pick up your merchandise, the merchandise becomes part of the shop's assets. So how could this possibly be? Well, the reason is that Joe is utilizing his son to make money. And how do we know this? Because in one of the emails in this computer, it reserves 10% of the action for the big guy. It is obvious to anybody who the big guy would be in a business relating to the Biden family. This computer has been authenticated. You must realize that the person that found all this information handed in the computer to the FBI. He additionally made copies of the hard drive. And he showed this copy to Rudy Giuliani's lawyer. Giuliani's lawyer had been a high member of the Justice Department. So he just didn't give it to first fellow that came by. This is a person who's used to dealing with evidence. And then he passed it on to Rudy Giuliani, who was in number 3 in the Justice Department and number 1 in the Southern District of New York, also for the Justice Department. And Giuliani has been in the private sector for many years now in the security business. In addition to this, the newspaper that published this news, the New York Post, is the oldest newspaper in circulation in the United States. It was founded by Alexander Hamilton, and it's a reputable newspaper with plenty of investigative journalists who have authenticated and are releasing this information to the public. The Democrats claim that this is a Russian hoax, but the Biden family and the Biden campaign have not denied the authenticity of these emails. In addition, this hard drive contains Hunter Biden doing crack cocaine and having compromising positions of the horizontal kind. There is no doubt that this belongs to Hunter Biden. His signature appears on the documents for handing in the computer to the shop. And it was just a big mistake by someone who was a crack addict, normally may not be fully aware of the consequences of his actions. But even more importantly than Hunter Biden, it is the evidence that Joe Biden is at the center of this Biden and company operation, because everybody who has a name Biden profits from these things without any prior knowledge. For example, there's a medical doctor married to a Biden daughter. Next thing you know, the guy stops being a medical doctor, is practicing this kind of operation that is going on. So we have a very critical situation, especially even more than with Ukraine, with China. All during the last 3-4 years, the left has tried to paint a Russian conspiracy by which we cannot trust Donald Trump. And it turns out that this is like a mirror, Everything they have been accusing Mr. Trump of doing, the Clintons, Obama, and Bidens have been doing themselves. Why do I include Obama in the picture? Because Obama and Biden were both told in person by the National Security Council, head of the National Security Council, that the Russian hoax was part and parcel of a mission by Mrs. Clinton to get the eyes of everybody off her case due to the way she destroyed 33,000 emails and turn the attention of everybody to collusion between Russia and Mr. Trump. And it turns out it was her who was colluding. It was her who approved the sale of a uranium mine to our great enemies, Russia. Uranium being a very important element that is needed for nuclear weapons, especially now that the U.S. has lost access to Venezuelan uranium. So I don't recall any other time where such a high-ranking member of an administration has such a compromised situation that he could so easily be influenced by a foreign power. And we have plenty of video clips in which Joe Biden states that China is not our enemy, is not our adversary, and that we don't even have to worry about it. Well, my dad used to say, when someone says don't worry about it, I begin to worry about it. And Mr. Biden has certainly portrayed a very China-friendly philosophy. Now, every time Donald Trump speaks anything in any way favorable to Russia, immediately the press jumps up and down as evidence that he's in the Russians' pocket. Well, in this case, it's very evident that in addition to the Ukraine business, the Kazakh business, the Iraq business, the Jamaica business, the Costa Rica business, the business with China included even greater than 10% share for the big guy. There's really no better reason to vote for Mr. Trump in this following elections than the grave danger that would be posed by someone in the White House that has had such a record of being reckless in his wisdom in doing business, but in addition to that, having the audacity to profit in such a way from the public trust that has been granted to him when he was vice president for 8 years. To me, this is a deal breaker for anyone who could possibly think of voting for Mr. Biden. Just like the Clinton Foundation was a deal breaker for anyone who has any degree of honesty and would not like to have, as president of the United States, someone engaged in such shady deals. On the other hand, if we look at Mr. Trump, they have been looking at his business dealings with a fine-tooth comb for years now. $45 million by Mr. Mueller. Newspapers, the Southern District of New York, Justice Department, U.S. Justice Department. And Mr. Trump has been telling all of us that he doesn't have any dealings with Russia. He even stopped all his operations with the Trump company when he left it to be run by his son. He stopped every other transaction with foreign players or in foreign territory, costing him millions of dollars in the prospective businesses he could have engaged in. To me, it is very clear, it is very sad that a person who has this very nice persona of Uncle Joe is really reminded me of another Uncle Joe Stalin, because these kinds of unconscionable dealings to line the pockets of his family, who would then kick it back to him, is just beyond the pale. And I hope that all Americans are aware of what has been happening and are able to discern that attacks on the messenger is not the same thing as attacking the actual problem. If the media attacks Rudy Giuliani or attacks the Post newspaper, that has nothing to do with the veracity of the contents of this laptop. Now, one important factor to remember is the FBI has had for months this computer in their possession. The FBI didn't utter a word about it during the impeachment of Mr. Trump. And Mr. Trump was impeached precisely on the topic of Ukraine. So there is a direct link between the information contained in this computer and the proceedings against the President of the United States, and the FBI did not lift a finger to provide to the American people any evidence, any information that would have shed light on what was going on in Ukraine. On the other hand, the evidence that everybody can see is a videotape in which Joe Biden, the point man for Obama in Ukraine, tells a gathering of the Council on Foreign Relations that he went to Ukraine, looked at his watch, and told them, "I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the Attorney General of Ukraine is not fired, you are not getting the $1 billion in American aid. And if you don't believe me," he said, "go ahead and call Obama." Incidentally, this Attorney General was investigating his son, Hunter Biden. I don't know what else do we need to know. So you know what you have to do. If you have any more questions about this, very easy to go to the internet today and get the bird's eye view and even drill down to the minutest detail to corroborate all the information that I have told you today. Goodbye. I hope you never become an exile due to the shenanigans of people like this. Good night.